Mason spewed hurtful words at his own son, declaring, "I don't need such a costly child," who was trying his best to endure the painful treatment, determined not to be defeated by the disease. Right beside Mason, hearing those words, Bella burst out laughing. Seeing the outrageous behavior of these two, I decided to cut off ties with them for good. If you too feel that way, I, as his grandmother, will adopt him. Feel free to do so. It's not like he has much time left anyway. Just don't come back to us saying you're broke when it's time for his funeral, okay? Bella carelessly uttered those words and laughed loudly. Hearing this, I was overwhelmed with fury. From now on, we're strangers. Never contact me again. Got it? See ya. There was something I've been told by the doctor regarding my grandson Matthew's condition, but I decided to cut ties without informing my eldest son and his wife about it. When they find out, I'm sure they'll regret it deeply. As I gently hugged my grandson Matthew, I had a premonition that they would definitely regret what they'd done. My name is Maria. I'm 65 years old. I don't work and I live as a housewife. My husband passed away 8 years ago and now I live alone. It was lonely at first, but I've gotten used to it. With my husband's inheritance, my retirement fund, and my pension combined, I can live a nice peaceful life. I have a son and his name is Mason. He's 35 and still hasn't settled down. Even though he is at the ideal age of getting married, he doesn't have a stable job and lives freely every day. After graduating college, he got a job but quit after 2 months because of conflicts with his boss. He's had jobs on and off, but none lasted. My husband and I sometimes had to pay off debts that Mason had. When my husband was alive, he lectured Mason about his lifestyle. After he passed away, Mason rarely visited due to my husband's will. Mason only received a mandatory minimum inheritance. Perhaps that's why he was upset. I haven't kept in touch with him. I've cared for and supported him until he graduated from college, both mentally and financially. But I feel responsible for the fact that my son has grown up with such a careless personality. I believed I had done enough for Mason until he stepped into society, thinking that I didn't need to help him that much once he became an adult. However, one day out of the blue, Mason returned home without any notice. It had been 3 years since we last saw each other, but he looked different and seemed worn out. His fashion had changed dramatically, wearing something like an aloha shirt, and he stood out in our rural area full of farmlands. "Hey, I got married, you know?" "What? Married?" Caught off guard by the Sun news, I was left in a state of shock and confusion, seeing my perplexed expression. Then he clicked his tongue and called out to someone in his car. "Hey, it's okay now. Come over here, okay?" The woman who stepped out of the car with a high-pitched voice was dressed in a way that also stood out, which was difficult to ignore. And to my surprise, behind her was a small child toddling along. What a child! What on earth is going on? Look, the kid is still too young for us to work properly, and we're always short of money. That's why we've come back home, carrying such surprising news. I couldn't believe Mason's nonchalant attitude. The little child, who seemed to be around 2 years old, had long hairstyle that made it difficult to tell if the child was a boy or a girl. However, upon closer inspection, the child had a slight resemblance to Mason when he was young. "From today on, we'll be staying here." "Hello, I'm Bella. Nice to meet you." Bella breezily passed by me and entered the house, as if she had always lived there, while the little child tried hard to follow his mother. Bella seemed to pay him no mind and quickly went inside. Seeing this, I couldn't bring myself to turn them away and allowed them into my home. The moment they placed their luggage down, the couple looked as though they were about to go out, so I hurriedly stopped them and asked for an explanation. After my husband passed away, Mason quickly got to know Bella, and they started dating. Soon after, they discovered she was pregnant. By the time they found out, it was too late for an abortion. They decided to have the baby, but things turned out more costly than expected, and they ran out of money, which led them back here. However, it seems they still have money for their own pleasures, just not for their child. What? How can you be so irresponsible? If you want, the kid's a hassle. Can't talk yet, and to be honest, just gets in the way. It was shocking to hear such heartless words from my own son, but what shocked me even more was seeing Bella not in agreement. Well, that's how it is. Looking after and loving your grandchild is a grandma's duty, right? Please help us out. We're going to grab a drink near the station. Matthew, be good and stay with Grandma. Despite my attempts to stop them, they quickly left, ignoring what I had to say. It takes about 20 minutes by car from our house to the station. It's certainly not within walking distance. Given that it's a rural area, I'm not sure if there's any taxi service available. Besides, would they even use such a service to come back? Hey, Matthew. When I tentatively called out my grandson Matthew's name, he responded with a bright, adorable smile. His smile was just like that of my young Mason. Seeing that smile made me smile back, but it felt like a tight squeeze in my chest. Such a precious smile. I have to protect him from now on. Seeing Matthew's innocent smile, I vowed to do so from the bottom of my heart during our time living together. Whenever I taught Matthew household rules, he picked them up quickly. He was a very bright child. By the time he turned 3, he had learned to speak very well, better than most children his age. I couldn't help but adore him. As for my eldest son and his wife, they seemed to consistently ignore their own son Matthew, even treating him like a nuisance. Moreover, they had no intention of working and, of course, contributed nothing to the household expenses. They would go out drinking daily, and sometimes wouldn't return for several days. This bizarre situation had become normal for Matthew, and it seemed like he would cautiously observe their moves to avoid getting close to them. I couldn't stand it and spoke to Bella. Bella, could you spend a little more time with Matthew? After all, you are his mother. What? Why are you saying this? I'm busy, you know. You're the one taking care of him, right? She said this without even looking at me doing her manicure. Claiming to be busy when she spends her days doing whatever she pleases is quite the statement. Suppressing the urge to yell at her, thinking of Matthew, I pleaded once more. Matthew just turned 3. Children that age cling to their mothers when they feel lonely. Oh please. I never wanted to be a mother in the first place. Maybe it's better if he calls you Mom, isn't it? Are you serious? Oh come on. Of course I'm not. You look so scary right now. She must have seen the anger on my face. In the end, Bella and I couldn't have a proper conversation about Matthew, and she just left with Mason as usual to go drinking. Matthew seemed like he didn't mind that his parents left and continued to flip through his picture book. If he found his favorite fish in the book, he'd excitedly point it out and teach me about it with his limited vocabulary. Seeing him like that was a relief, but I can't help but worry about how my eldest son and his wife plan to raise Matthew in the future. Such thoughts only intensify my anxieties. Considering Matthew's future, it's possible to cover the tuition fee with my husband's inheritance if necessary. I have no choice. I need to be prepared. As I prayed at my husband's altar, I murmured to myself. When I glanced at his photo, I felt like he was cheering me on, and I nodded in response. For 3 years after making that decision, I endured living with my eldest son and his wife while I watched their reckless behaviors. My eldest son and his wife went out every day, and they often took money from my wallet without asking. Of course, I took care of Matthew during that time, and there was hardly any conversation between him and his parents. Matthew grew up rapidly, and one day just before his elementary school enrollment, a tragedy struck. Hello, are you Matthew's grandmother? Dee has been taken to the hospital. Can you come immediately? On my way back from receiving adoption paperwork from the city office, I received a call that Matthew was taken to the hospital. It took 3 years of living together, multiple visits to the city office, and finally an opportunity to adopt Matthew was being given to me. I thought I could finally separate him from them, but what could have possibly happened? Holding back my emotions, I headed to the hospital where Matthew had been taken. Upon arriving and hearing the details, the doctor mentioned Matthew would need to be admitted. I was confused and asked for clarification. Doctor, what's wrong with Matthew? What's the problem? I'll explain the details once his parents arrive, the doctor said, seeming to be waiting for Matthew's parents. But the nurse approached with a worried look, which gave me a bad feeling. She nodded at me, then whispered something to the doctor. What? The parents don't want to know about their own child's condition. Surprised by the unexpected attitude of my eldest son and his wife, the doctor's loud voice echoed throughout the hospital. I sighed, thinking it was just as I expected. Then, swallowing my pride, I explained our family situation to the doctor. At first, she seemed skeptical, but after seeing the detailed records I kept and realizing Matthew's biological parents weren't coming, She believed me and explained Matthew's condition. Ma'am, about Matthew's condition, please stay calm. The test results showed cancer in his kidneys. What? Cancer? This can't be. The unexpected news was a shock, and I fell from the chair I was sitting on. The pain of the fall was nothing compared to the shock of hearing about cancer in a 6-year-old's body. The nurse helped me get up, and the doctor started talking again. Fortunately, there's no sign of metastasis in Matthew's case. With immediate surgery, his life can be saved. Really? If he undergoes the surgery, he will be saved. Yes, however, we need the parents' consent for the operation. The cancer could progress quickly, and ideally, we'd operate immediately after explaining to the parents. Hearing this, I was at a loss for what to do. I couldn't imagine those two showing any concern for Matthew. As I pondered, I decided to visit Matthew's room first. There, I witnessed something I couldn't have imagined. Hey, I heard you have cancer, a voice said. I overheard the doctor talking to your grandma in another room. Your life's in danger. If you keep clinging to life, it'll cost us more money, so just do us a favor. Hearing these heartless words, I felt rage building inside me, but Matthew, who had just been subjected to such terrible words from his parents, looked at them with somewhat cold eyes. The cold stare he gave to his parents seemed mature beyond his 6 years. His parents appeared taken aback but soon laughed again. Really? You're such an expensive kid. What are you saying? You two are the ones wasting money without thinking. I burst into the room. Mason looked surprised, but he quickly turned to Matthew and started mocking him again. We don't need such an expensive child like you. He hurled cruel words at his own son, who was bravely facing his illness. Next to Mason, his wife Bella was laughing hysterically. Witnessing their outrageous behavior, I decided to cut ties with them forever. If that's how you feel, I, as his grandmother, will adopt him. Go ahead. He won't live long anyway. Just don't ask us for money for the funeral. Bella said such a terrible thing and laughed out loud. Hearing this, an indescribable rage surged within me. From now on, we are strangers. Don't ever contact me again. Got it? See you then. Actually, I had been informed by the doctor about my grandson Matthew's medical condition, but I didn't share this with my eldest son and his wife and decided to cut ties. When they find out the truth, I'm sure they'll deeply regret the choices they made. As I gently hugged my grandson Matthew, I had a premonition that they would definitely regret what they'd done. I told Matthew everything about his cancer and the upcoming surgery. I explained to him not to worry about the money and requested him to go through with the operation. Matthew, I want you to live. I know the surgery might be scary, but you will definitely recover. I'll be right beside you, Grandma. If you're with me, I'm not afraid of anything. I'll go through the surgery and treatment, I promise, Matthew replied, trying to smile despite enduring such harsh words from his own parents. I hugged him tightly. I also explained to him about the adoption process I had been preparing for. Matthew seemed a bit worried about the adoption at first, but he accepted it. That night, I discussed the adoption with my eldest son and his wife, who were drinking at home. They always said they didn't want a child since they cost money and seemed to not really like Matthew. It was time to kick them out of my house. I decided to offer them a substantial amount of money for them to stay away from us forever. Without hesitation, they signed the adoption papers and showed no sign of regrets or attachment towards Matthew. Rather, they looked like they were in a good mood about having access to the money I gave them and quickly left the house. And during the talk, they didn't even glance at or speak a word to Matthew, who was ill. Seeing their lack of responsibility as parents saddened me, but I was relieved that one source of pain for Matthew was now gone. Soon after, Matthew underwent surgery, which thankfully was successful. Being young, he recovered quickly and was soon on track to be discharged. Doctor, thank you so much. Congratulations on your discharge. I'm glad. If you ever feel something's wrong, come see me right away. Yes, understood. During his hospital stay, Matthew became close to his doctor. He hugged the doctor in gratitude. Once back home, Matthew laid down on his bed. Grandma, thank you so much for allowing me to have the surgery. Oh, don't mention it. I'm your parent now, and it's what parents should do. You must be tired today. Get some good rest. Okay, I'll take a short nap. Matthew quickly fell into a deep sleep, snoring lightly. Not long after, there was a call from the hospital. Oh, did I accidentally leave something at the hospital? I quickly answered the phone call from the hospital. Hello, sorry for the sudden call. Actually, someone from the TV station came to the hospital, and they really want to meet Matthew. What? A person from the TV station? Why Matthew? I was completely puzzled and my mind was filled with questions. After listening carefully, it seems that during Matthew's hospital stay, he became friends with a writer who was there for an interview. That writer apparently wrote the stories that Matthew shared on the internet, and those stories were well received by the public, which led to discussions about turning them into a movie. I was utterly surprised. I hadn't known about this since Matthew had talked to the writer outside of my visiting hours. If it becomes a movie, Matthew won't act in it, and of course they won't use his real name. But since it's his story, people who know the context might recognize that it's his story. I see. Let me think about it. I'd like to discuss it with Matthew too. Wanted to think calmly, I decided to hang up the phone for now. Matthew woke up, rubbing his sleepy eyes. When I told him about the call from the hospital, his eyes sparkled with joy. Really? My story? It's going to be a movie that everyone watches. It seems so. They said they'll hide your real name and make the movie. How why? It's fine. Let them make the movie with my name. What if they use your real name? Everyone will know about your illness and our family situation, you know? Facing my surprised reaction, Matthew answered with an innocent smile. Because I want to brag to everyone that I have such a wonderful grandma like you. Oh Matthew, thank you. I never expected to hear such heartwarming words. Tears welled up in my eyes because of Matthew's kindness. That night's dinner tasted saltier than usual, but I felt profoundly happy and fulfilled. The movie preparations went smoothly. While the film wasn't shot using his real name, Matthew was introduced as the model for his story. The movie became a huge hit after its release, with theaters being packed full of people every day. I watched it myself, and even though I already knew the story, I couldn't hold back my tears seeing the touching scenes of a supportive grandmother and her intelligent grandson trying to survive together. Matthew was later invited to many events to give lectures about his story. On days he didn't have school, he led a busy life, wanting to support children of his age fighting cancer daily. He, being an experienced person, also wanted to cheer them on. I did my best to support him. Thanks to the numerous lectures he was invited to, Matthew's bank account amassed more than enough for a lifetime. With this amount, he could focus on treatment without financial worries. If his illness relapsed, and even if something were to happen to me, there would be more than enough money for him to attend university without any concerns. With these thoughts, I carefully stored the passbook under Matthew's name, thinking it would be essential for the future. One day, after such a life had continued, my eldest son and his wife, who we hadn't heard from in about 4 years, suddenly came to our house. From what we could gather, it seemed they had lost a lot of money through gambling and were now in significant debt. As soon as they saw Matthew, they approached him with the same sleazy smiles they would make before. Oh Matthew, you've grown so much. It's been a while since we last saw you. Don't you miss your mom and dad? Exactly, we raised you when you were a baby. Don't you think you owe us? Despite having abandoned Matthew the moment they learned of his illness, my eldest son and his wife were still as selfish as ever. Facing the selfish couple, Matthew gave them a cold look and said, "Who are you?" At his unexpected words, both Mason and Bella were taken aback, their mouths tightening, trying not to laugh at their reactions. I stepped in between the couple and Matthew to continue the conversation. "Excuse me, but who might you be? And do you have some business with my son, Matthew?" "What are you talking about? Matthew is my son. That makes him your grandson." Mason would say this angrily, but I too looked at the couple with a cold stare. Under my gaze, Mason flinched for a moment, but soon turned to Matthew with a pleading tone. "Listen, Matthew, I messed up. I lost more money than I thought in horse racing. I'm in a really bad situation now. Can you help me out? If I have $50,000, it would be enough."
$50,000?
That much. I couldn't help but exclaim at the unexpected amount. No matter the reason, a debt of $50,000 from gambling was unthinkable. My late husband and I always warned him against gambling and going into debt, but it seemed Mason hadn't listened at all. The money Matthew saved came from the fees he received for giving lectures. He went through a lot to earn that money, sharing painful memories in front of many people. You too can't use his hard-earned money just for your enjoyment. I firmly refused and closed the front door right in front of Mason's face. Outside, my eldest son and his wife seemed to be shouting and complaining, but they were so loud that I called the police. Soon after, the noise died down, and it seemed the two of them had given up and gone home. However, they apparently didn't give up that easily. The next morning, the couple started causing a commotion in front of our house again. Mom, please listen. I've changed my mind and I'm turning over a new leaf. I'm sorry for everything. Please let me in, Matthew. I'm so sorry. From now on, I'll be with you and take care of you properly. So please let me in. Saying this, they continued to knock on the front door from early in the morning, proving to be a great annoyance in the neighborhood. Despite their persistent noise, Matthew continued his breakfast inside. Eventually, he reluctantly went to the entrance, yet the unlocking sound of the door wasn't heard. Wondering what was going on, I discreetly checked the situation. Instead of approaching the door, Matthew was observing the couple from a small window slightly away from the entrance. Unaware of his gaze, the couple continued to knock desperately on the door. Then Dee made a proposal. Well then, I'll give you a few questions. If you answer even one correctly, we can live together. Really? It's just like that? Despite everything, you're still a kid at heart, aren't you? What's the question? I'll answer anything. A relieved and cheerful voice came from Mason, who was on the other side of the door. After a brief pause, Matthew presented the first question to Mason. First question. Tell me my favorite and least favorite foods. Hey, Bella should know this, right? From the very first question, it seemed Mason had no idea. Bella, who was entrusted with the answer, thought for a moment and answered in a calm voice. Any mother would know that. It's obvious, right? Your favorites are pudding and chiffon cake, and you hate bell peppers. Hearing their answer, I secretly sighed without them noticing. With a complicated smile mixed with a bit of sadness, Matthew once again looked down at the couple outside the window. Are you sure? That's your final answer? Of course. First of all, it's unimaginable for a mother not to know her own son's likes and dislikes. A voice filled with confidence echoed from outside, suggesting Bella was certain about her answer. Hearing their reply, Matthew laughed heartily. The couple, who never expected to be laughed at, were probably flustered. After a good chuckle, Matthew, having regained his composure, responded back to Bella. That's wrong. What a shame. What? Why? You were always so happy when there were cakes, weren't you? That was Dad's favorite, wasn't it? I used to have an egg allergy, that's why I don't eat things like pudding or cakes filled with eggs. However, I love the egg-free cakes Grandma makes. Also, I hate whipped cream, but I absolutely love bell peppers. Is that true? In fact, until Matthew came to my house, he was only given cheap instant porridges and slices of bread. Given such a poor diet, I always wondered how he managed to live like that. However, the reason Matthew didn't get sick was largely because of the meals he got at the daycare he attended. The principal, who saw his meals, noticed the change in Matthew's condition. Thanks to her, the meals were changed to allergy-friendly meals, and she observed his daily health changes. When she warned Bella for her careless way of raising Matthew and told her that if she didn't change her attitude, she would report to the Child Consultation Center, Bella then immediately suggested for Matthew to stop going to the nursery and came over and settled in my house. Hey, how long do you think we've been living apart? How would I know that? Then next question. Please tell me my birthday. Huh? Your birthday. Matthew's birthday is actually today. Normally, a parent wouldn't forget their child's birthday, especially not the mother. However, despite this simple question, the couple showed no signs of even trying to answer the question. Huh? Why aren't you answering? It's such an easy question, isn't it? What? Of course I know that, right, Mason? Isn't it? When Bella turned to Mason, he replied in a panicky voice saying, Of course I know that, obviously. Despite saying this, the two of them didn't seem to know the actual answer. If you don't know, you should just admit it. Even after waiting for about 5 minutes, the two didn't answer. Matthew muttered under his breath from his expression. It was clear he was sad that even his own parents didn't remember his birthday, and my heart ached for him. No, wait, I just had a brain fart. Of course I know it. Yes, it's just that you said it so suddenly I was so surprised it just slipped my mind. Can you give me a hint? In response to their stupid excuses, Matthew laughed out loud. However, I could see tears forming in his eyes. Feeling very bad for Matthew, I quietly moved closer to him and held his hand. Surprised when he saw me, but he nodded, wiped away his tears, and looked straight at the couple saying, "Hey, it's normal for real parents to remember their own child's birthday, but you're asking for hints and all these funny things. I've never been celebrated by you two, so it's just as expected." "What? After all I did to give birth to you, and this is how you repay me? Shouldn't you be grateful?" Bella, looking like she was snapping back, started to get angry. Matthew just gave her a cold look. Unable to bear his icy gaze, Bella got quiet. "Well, last question." "It's an easy one." Matthew posed the last question to the couple. "I was diagnosed with cancer and received treatment at a hospital. Which organ was affected?" It's definitely a question any parent could easily answer. Moreover, they had repeatedly explained about Matthew's illness on TV. The couple, who has shown no interest in their son, was certainly aware, since it has been featured on TV for several days. However, the answers they gave were unexpected. "Wasn't it the heart?" "Huh. No, wasn't it the stomach?" I was so surprised that I even leaned back and looked up at the ceiling. Knowing their hopeless situation despite Matthew's story being a hot topic in the world, I realized for the first time that my eldest son and his wife had absolutely no interest in Matthew. Upon hearing this, Matthew must have thought, "I never expected it to be this bad." I felt sorry for Matthew as I watched him with concern. To my surprise, he was laughing. "Thanks, I get it now. It's worse than I thought. What's wrong? Did we miss something?" Seeing Matthew's unexpected full smile, my eldest son and his wife seemed puzzled. Not knowing how to respond, Matthew answered with a smile, but his eyes weren't smiling at all. "You know it's kidney cancer. Despite you claiming to be my family, you know nothing about me. The only one I consider my family is Grandma Maria." "Excuse me? Shouldn't you be grateful I gave birth to you?" "That's the point. To me, the only one I can call a parent is Grandma Maria." "Oh, looks like my ride is here. Please don't bother coming here again." Matthew left those words to them and closed the window with a bang. Outside, my eldest son and his wife were raising their voices in anger. However, when the police arrived and warned them, they immediately stopped and it became silent. I was worried that Matthew might have been hurt by this, but he looked relieved and smiled at me. What I said to them just now, that they are not my parents, is truly how I feel. I've always wanted to call you Mom. I was just too shy to say it. Can I call you that? Of course, Matthew. Thank you. Touched by his words, I hugged Matthew tightly in tears. Mom, you're squeezing too hard. But he hugged me back just as tightly. As for those two, they claimed to be the victims, saying they had lost their son to me. They were saying nonsense like I was being deceived by him. But everything they've done to Matthew is all documented and recorded, including testimonies from his kindergarten days and the parenting diary that I kept. The police reviewed the evidence and dismissed their claims. Still, for the sake of verifying facts, the police did contact us. The officers seemed to be somewhat exasperated with the stubborn claims of my eldest son and his wife. After the call from the police, Matthew went to the police station alone to see those two. He came back looking refreshed. I said my final goodbyes to them, and while I was there I also spilled everything about the terrible things they've done. They won't have a normal life for a while, I guess. Matthew showed me the evidence he had mentioned. Shockingly, there was footage of the couple committing theft and exchanging money with a stranger. It seemed they believed they could live comfortably off the royalties if they could draw Matthew to their side. They even planned to sell him to someone known for shady dealings in the black market. They have such a terrible plan, I said in shock, feeling chills down my spine. I never thought my own son would be so cruel to his own child. Matthew spoke softly to me, who was dumbfounded. I asked the manager to look into it, and we found out about this shocking truth. I thought if you found out about this, you might be shocked to the point of fainting. That's why I kept it a secret. I'm sorry. It's okay, Matthew. For you, I'd do anything and always have your back. It's even scarier to not know about such a terrible truth. I'm really sorry for hiding it from you all this while, I replied. The only one who worries about me this much is you, Mom. That's why I want to protect you too from now on. Matthew said with a slightly embarrassed expression. Tears of joy welled up in my eyes. Even though he has faced many hardships and looks mature for a 10-year-old, that shy expression he had looked just like a child, which warmed my heart. As for my eldest son and his wife, they were later found to have committed numerous other crimes and eventually served nearly 10 years in prison. They never showed any remorse or apologized. The letters they sent are collected by Matthew's manager, and they still demand repayment for having brought him into the world. Matthew continues to visit hospitals to encourage sick children. He's now in middle school and has hit puberty, but his inherently kind and honest nature remains unchanged. He's living an honest life. Lately it seems he has a girlfriend. I catch glimpses of him sneaking out on dates, and I watch over him fondly thinking how cute. The cancer we were worried about shows no signs of recurrence at the moment, and his recovery is going well. Although it's impossible to say it will never come back. Regular checkups are essential. Still, for now, he's living just like any other kid of his age and seems happy every day. I still fuss over Matthew and nag him a lot. Naturally, there are times when he gets annoyed, but taking care of him is what gives my life purpose. I hope Matthew can bear with me a little longer. My current biggest goal is to live long enough to attend Matthew's wedding as a parent. If I'm to be greedy, I'd love to see the face of Matthew's child, my great-grandchild. To ensure I live healthily till then, I've started going to the gym. Because of this, people around me are often surprised, calling me a lively and young grandmother. For Matthew's sake too, I'll strive to be a mother he can proudly show off for as long as possible. I'm going to keep pushing forward.